Hey everybody, I wanted to explain a little bit about this concept of angle of vision. So, as we begin talking about rhetoric and the various things that come into play between a writer or a speaker and the audience, we're also thinking about rhetorical strategies. And so, knowing that we use language in a certain way to have a desired effect on a particular audience is absolutely important when you want to understand the rhetorical strategies used by a writer or a speaker to engage or have a particular effect with a certain type of audience. And we have to keep in mind that the writer is controlled. So you want to think what strategies are used to persuade a particular audience. And this becomes extremely important and more relevant to you as you learn more about the rhetorical analysis project that we will be doing in the first part of the semester. So we have this concept of angle of vision. And you see here on the slide there's the image of it's a cartoon, right? We have two panels, and it's all a matter of perspective, right? The first one, we have a picture of a man on an island, and he sees in the distance somebody out in a boat, and he's like, hooray, boat, right? And the perspective there is that this person might be filled with hope that somebody is coming to take them off the island and, you know, get him out of the situation that he was in. In the second panel, we have the perspective of the man in the boat or the person in the boat. And they're like, yay, land. And in the distance, we see the other person on the island. And you can imagine, well, maybe this person in the boat is very excited because they've been lost at sea for weeks or days, and they see an island in the distance. They can get out of the boat, they can get on dry land, they can actually talk to another person, right? So if you think of angle of vision, it's the way that the author is choosing to present the writing, or the speaker is choosing to present what they are saying or presenting. And I like to think of it, it's not just reserved to alphabetic text, right? Words and characters. This is also the case for videos that you see and movies and anything that's audio and visual, multimodal, all of that stuff. And I like to talk about all of that stuff as kind of the quote unquote text, right? We are expanding our definition of text. It's not just alphabetic characters, but it encompasses all of the things that we consume as an audience. So think of angle of vision as the perspective or the point of view that a writer, a speaker, a creator presents in the story or in the text that they are putting out there for an audience to see, to engage with. So some of the factors of the angle of vision include details, right? You want to pay attention to the details, and I'll explain that in a minute because it's very important. And we have things such as word connotation, right? We have, certain words to express certain things. And as we are learning now, and we look at happiness in a different way, that different words can be used and they have certain emotional connections, right? That kind of thing. Sentence structure, organization, tone, and style. All of those things come into play with the angle of vision because, again, these are strategies that writers, speakers, creators use to have a particular effect on the audience. If you don't come away from this class with only one thing, and it's that, right? We have the rhetorical situation, and people who create and speak and write do so in a certain way to have a desired effect, a particular effect on a certain audience. And it is all extremely deliberate. So you can also think of it as the lens, right? The audience is going to view the text, quote unquote text, in a certain way based on those choices that the writer, the speaker, the creator here I'm just going to use writer, makes, right? They're making very deliberate choices, and they're including those things that they think are important, right? So a writer or a speaker or a creator isn't going to dwell on things that aren't important to the text, because that would confuse the reader. If they just had all this random stuff in, the reader or the audience would be confused, right? So you need to remember that each choice is deliberate to persuade the audience in a certain way. We choose a certain lens to present our message in a way that we think will be most effective for the audience that we are trying to reach. You can also think of a party, right? And you see the image here, a bunch of young people having a party. Think about a party, right? You think that different audiences have different needs. And if you construct it this way, think of telling your grandma about a party versus telling your friend. What is the rhetorical strategy there, right? What details would you include, or which ones would you omit, right? You're going to tell your friends something quite different than what you would probably tell your grandma, unless you have, like, the coolest grandma on the face of the planet. What sort of language would you use? You might use more slang. You might curse with your friends, whereas with grandma, your language may be a bit more mild, right? You know grandma better than I do. I know with my grandmother, I could not even say a very mild curse word, or I would get in big trouble. So the language that you use matters as well. And then, of course, what genre or what medium would be suitable for that message? With grandma, it might mean that you have to be face to face and telling her about the party. With your friends, it might be a Snapchat or a text, right? Depending on how you have chosen to communicate with that friend. So, again, different audiences have different needs. And as writers, authors, speakers, creators, how we construct that message and how we get it out there depends on the audience. So again, we're thinking of the rhetorical situation. We have audience, we have purpose, and we have context. Purpose, again, think about what the writer or speaker is trying to accomplish in this text. What do they want their readers, or what do they want their audience to know? And what effect do they want to have on that audience? And of course, with the audience, you want to think about who that audience potentially might be. What are their expectations? What are their values? What do they need to know? And as you start to write things, especially for this class, you're going to be thinking about audience, right? Who is your audience? Is it me? Is it more than me? Do you want to create something that can ultimately be put out into the larger world? What are my expectations? What are your peers' expectations? What are our values? And what is the information that you think your audience needs to know? Those are the things you're going to include, right? And then lastly, we think about genre, because the audience will often dictate the genre, right? And our purposes will sometimes dictate the genre. So you have to think about the kind of medium or the mode that the text is in. What are the requirements for structure and style? Genre gives the audience clues to what they're reading and what they're seeing, right? That way they're not confused. So we know that an academic essay is going to be different structurally than a PowerPoint presentation, right? With an academic essay, you aren't presenting a printout of your slides. You are writing an essay, and an essay looks a certain way on the page, right? In a PowerPoint presentation or Prezi or Google Slides, a slide presentation of some kind looks a certain way, right? They have slides, and there can be all sorts of fantastic things to do with your slides. I am definitely not the master of PowerPoint presentations, but I know that there are great things to be done with them. And then, of course, you have to think that genre also helps the writer or the speaker to decide what details to include. So hopefully that explains a bit about angle of vision. Think of it as perspective or point of view, and that depending on your purposes, depending on your audience, you're going to create a message uh, tailored for that audience, and that will help to dictate the genre as well. Okay, take care, everybody. Bye bye.